Once you've located the sephira that the significator card is in, read the narrative of that card pile through the filter or lens of that sephira. Then reflect back on the first operation and see whether the elemental dignities of the sephira bear any notable relationships with the elemental dignities from the world your significator resided in from the opening of the four worlds. Now, if there are no notable relations throughout the 5 operations up to the point of the opening of the 5th operation, there might not be enough active forces in your environment right now to propel you toward what it is you want. Because patterns, synchronicity, these are the signs and omens used by the divine or superconsciousness to communicate revelation. So that's what you want to look for on a conscious level to determine whether the key has been opened during this divinatory process. If the key was not revealed to you after all that effort, don't despair. A lot of insight is still gained from that effort, and pages 52 and 53 of your workbook provides a line of inquiry to help you make the most of an OOTK trial where the key was not revealed. By the way, this sense that sometimes the key is revealed during the OOTK and sometimes it is not actually spelled out in any of the primary texts that we've talked about so far, or even really by any of the contemporary texts. This is just something I found on my own through personal trial and error through having worked with the divinatory process for almost a decade. But the magnificent attribute of the OOTK, why I'm such a big proponent of learning it, even if you never actually use it, is because it is such an incredible training tool for teaching you how to spot patterns, not just in card readings as a tarot reader, but patterns in the universe, to basically develop your intuitive or psychic abilities to merge science and intuition together in a way that empowers you as an occultist or metaphysician. I promise you that if you've set the intentions right, use ritual in a way to establish that heightened consciousness of your mind prior to commencing the OOTK, the invocation step of all this, you're going to be really, really astonished at the synchronicities and patterns, coincidences, and just the eeriness of the accuracy of your own divinatory trials with the OOTK. The 5th operation is that final moment to achieving communion with the divine. It represents that moment you ascend from consciousness to superconsciousness. So each operation up to the 5th operation is about heightening your consciousness and propelling you upward or deeper to put you in closer proximity with the divine God principle. At the level of the 5th operation, in theory, you should be completely open and receptive, your mind having achieved the same vibrational frequency as higher consciousness or the divine. So you should be ready to receive the key, which is the whole point of the opening of the key divinatory process. But okay, here's the thing. If you don't personally subscribe to the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, then using it for the 5th operation doesn't make a whole lot of sense, does it? My point is, for true divination and connecting to divinity, you have to go the route you know. In this master class, we learned the textbook way, which calls for the Tree of Life. That's because the esoteric tradition that the opening of the key procedure was born out of subscribes to the Hermetic Kabbalah. So it makes perfect sense for them to use the Tree of Life. If you also subscribe to the Kabbalah, then yeah, the Tree of Life for the 5th operation makes perfect sense, and I can't imagine you using any other approach for the 5th operation. For someone like me, it would make more sense to use an esoteric tradition closer to my heritage, so I go with the 8 trigrams of the I Ching. Would it make sense for someone from the Golden Dawn tradition to use the I Ching? Probably not. Who knows? I don't know. But my guess is probably not. So just as I have done for this master class, work with the Kabbalistic Tree of Life at least a few times just to get the hang of the mechanics of the OOTK. But ultimately, you'll want to modify every step of the OOTK in a way that complies with your own faith, your own approaches, and your own belief systems. It's like how there are these 2 distinct ways to get from Berkeley, that's a city in the San Francisco Bay Area for those who don't know, to my home address, but I'm an idiot, so I only know one of them. There's this one set way I always take from Berkeley to home. Now, if you ask me to take that other second route from Berkeley to home, I almost always get lost or I'm bound to make a wrong turn. True story. My husband, James, always laughs at me about it. So let's say something urgent has come up and I really need to get from Berkeley to home in as short amount of a time as possible. Would that be the time for me to try taking that alternate route? No, that'd be asinine of me. I'm going to take the route I know. I can experiment with and learn alternate routes later, you know? Learn other esoteric systems on your own time, but when you come forth for divination, use what you know. Use what resonates most powerfully for you. Don't just cut and paste occult techniques or follow verbatim what somebody else does. Let me show you how I approach the fifth operation personally. And here, just watch for fun and just listen. There's really no need to learn anything really here other than learning that you will want to modify the fifth operation to customize it towards your own belief systems the way I have. Okay, assuming I've performed the first through fourth operations up to this point, now I distribute the cards into 8 piles, following the I Ching 8 trigrams. This part isn't going to be in any of your course material since, in case it wasn't obvious, it deviates substantially from textbook instruction. This is just my own personal thing. To get a sense of what I'm doing, I'm following the pattern of divine creation and the 8 trigrams, using the later heaven Bakwa, which is the one that metaphysicians tend to use. Now, fascinating point of commonality. Under Eastern principles, active begets passive. Remember earlier when we talked about the opening of the 4 worlds, how active elements beget the passive? Fire is the first point of creation, or the light, and then fire creates water, active to passive. In biblical metaphor, from Adam came Eve. From yang comes yin. From the active world is born the passive. See, in the Eastern metaphysical order of the trigrams, pictured here, yang the active begets yin, the passive principle. The order of trigrams goes in succession from yang to yin, heaven to earth. Interesting, huh? All right, back to tarot and the fifth operation. I think what I'm doing here is pretty easy to follow. After distributing all the cards in the deck into the 8 piles and a set order of the trigrams that represents my personal gnosis for how man can return to heaven or how we humans can achieve communion with God, in that same order, I go searching for the significator card. Please forgive the awkward use of one hand in the footage. My other hand is holding the camera, so I only have one hand to demonstrate the card procedure. Here, the significator, the Queen of Swords, is found in trigram 8, or Earth. All points of the fifth operation as taught remain the same, except instead of the Tree of Life, I'm using the I Ching Bakwa. And that's how I modify the fifth operation, so it makes sense to me.